Thank you, Stefan. Good afternoon, everybody. I guess you were already kindly welcomed by others, but I would like to personally welcome you here for those who are used to this yearly event and some newcomers, which I hope will come next year and the following years. You have had probably, and you will have a lot of presentations on the products, on the market. We are 10 days before Paris Air Show. I will give you only 3 elements which you largely know. The first one is the order books so far. So we got 517 gross orders, you know that. And this is why I managed to convince John to stretch our yearly target above 800 gross orders. We will see, but we are on good track. It confirms that the market globally is still very eager to select new aircraft, especially Neo 350. You know it's a bit more difficult on the 380, but we are working on that. The second, I think, good number is the number of aircraft we have delivered at the end of May. You know that last year we struggled a lot with the supply chain. This is not yet stable, but this is improving, and as a testimony of it, we have delivered at the end of May 246 aircraft. And I checked, last year it was 226, so 20 aircraft on top is significant, it's plus 10%. So we are on track with our objectives. I hope the second year will be less backloaded than 2012 when we had to deliver 72 aircraft in December. We made it, but I would like to avoid it. The third important thing at the end of May is that we have painted the first A350. You have seen it. In the meantime, this aircraft is carrying on to first flight, and I told you that we would fly around mid-year, and what I can say is that we are on track with this objective. If we can do a little bit faster, we will do it, but without rushing for that. I will stop here regarding numbers, products. I'm of course ready to take questions later on. I would like to tell you, after 1 year, how I see the evolution of Airbus, which is not limited to the current programs. What we are trying to do at the Executive Committee of Airbus is to look, of course, for further growth. It's to get even closer to our customers, to enhance the customer value, and it's also, we don't forget it, to foster our profitability. And I will give you a few points regarding my priorities to globally improve the performance of Airbus. The first one is that we have a clear focus on our deliverables. It has started already with Commanders, and we are strengthening it. We are focusing on our operational priorities, and we hope that we will see with the first flights of the 350 that on top of that we are not just rushing to pass milestones, we try to get appropriate level of maturity. This is of course not easy, we can be caught by surprises, others were, but this is, I think, a good mix between putting pressure onto the teams, but also having enough transparency, managing upfront the upcoming risks and looking for mitigation action. So this one is very important on 350 hopefully. I have pilots who tell me that they have not yet flown, of course, but that the results of the simulations, the quality of the first aircraft is better than in-service aircraft for previous types of the fleet. So this one is encouraging. The second one is Neo. On Neo, we have passed an important milestone, which is what we call main gate 7, meaning that we move to production now, and we are also very pleased to see that the first engine, the GTF of Pratt & Whitney, has flown onto their flying test bed with good performances very close to the specified one. So this is of course essential for the ramp up of a new program. If I take A400M, we have done what we promised, meaning that an aircraft is ready for delivery to the first customer, the French Air Force, and we hope that this acceptance process can be managed not before Paris Air Show, but let's say before summer break. It would be, I think, good for everybody who has worked very hard on this program and really managed to stick globally to what was promised in 2009. Second point, which is a slight change within Airbus, empower more the teams. We had for the last 5-6 years one battle to win, which was to integrate Airbus. And I was personally in charge of that, so it's easy for me to say that we won the battle, but I think we won actually. To the point that we have now harmonized ways of working, we have integrated processes, we have people who exchange between Toulouse, Hamburg and other places. We have, I think, now to transfer the responsibility at the appropriate level. People need to decide at the right place. We need to enhance the culture of accountability. And we have done that through a change of organization. And if we take the plants, they are for me no longer plants. They are kind of business units having their own resources in terms of quality, supply chain management, engineering, all that being part of big functions to make sure they have the appropriate quality and support of central functions, that they can arbitrate at their level. They can pilot their deliverables to the final assembly line. And it's the same for the programs, series or development programs. There is much more drive from the program. So I believe it starts to deliver the first benefits and it's an essential change for me in our culture. Regarding culture, we have also to win the battle of big groups with very high-tech content, which tend to become bureaucratic, which tend to focus only on very long-term research and technology, which tend to never decide because too many smart people try to decide at the same time and give their view. So, in other terms, it's to enhance the entrepreneurial spirit of our people. It's to be more agile. Is to decide quicker. So I give the tempo to the team because we can do that. And it's also try to fight complexity. What I recall each time is that we do things which are extremely complex with a very high level of technology and risks, but it's not a reason to over-engineer our ways of working, to over-complexify on top, even for simple things. So let's try to think simple. Which is, I think, a risk for a very successful group like Airbus, having 60,000 employees, 75,000 with our direct subsidiaries, probably 150,000 working on Airbus programs directly with the RSPs. We need to think about that. Another point is about delivering customer value. Of course, it's 350. Of course, it's 320neo. Or A400M, but it's also a lot about smaller, what I would call continuous improvement of our product or services. And it is not by chance if we have decided a year ago the extension to 242 tons of the 330. This is not by chance if we decided 3 months ago the high-density version of the 321. This one is not big interest for engineers. This is improvement of the performance of our aircraft, which delivers value to our customers. And you will hopefully see more of this kind of initiative within Airbus product policy. We will do the same with services, you know that. Then, innovation. Innovation is, of course, in the genes in the DNA of Airbus, but at the same time, innovation is not limited to technological innovation, to research and technology. We are investing largely more than 2 billion euros per year in research and development. We have more than 2,000 engineers purely focused on long-term R&D. This one is doing okay, but what I want is to change again the mindset and the culture of our people, to be very open to others' ideas, to be much faster in screening these ideas and in implementing the best one in our product portfolio. This is why you have seen probably that I have changed also the organization, and I have a Chief Innovation Officer coming from EADS, by the way, from Innovation Works. So he's used to working in networks across the group and with outside partners. We lead this innovation stream with a small seasoned team, and which will try to foster this culture within all the functions. Then I have to tell you that if we do all that, we are talking about people. All that comes down to people management. And we are spending a lot of our time investing in our people. We are not Jack Welch or any other. However, this is fundamental. And we develop a common culture. We promote the skills. We have hired 13,000 people across the world during the 2011, 12, and 13. We have mobilities of about 6,000 people a year, which is quite a lot because the blue colors don't rotate too much. We also identify the potentials. We take risks in promoting younger talents earlier. We focus a lot on gender diversity, as the nationality is already very diverse in Airbus, which is a big strength. We support our leadership values. We have changed 40% of the top 500 executives for the last 5 years. So this is what is at stake, and we take it very seriously, because at the end, this is what will make the difference. And this is how I will be judged with my top team. Whether my people are engaged, are motivated, I have the expertise within Airbus, and I don't have to force them to work together as a team. And I can tell you that when you tell them we want to fly the first A350, I have to do nothing. Of course, we'll not fly a new aircraft every year, but we need to find ways to make sure that this winning spirit, this can-do attitude, will be the basis of Airbus culture. Internationalization, I think Airbus has done a lot. Look at China. I have decided also to invest, the assembly line of the 320 in Alabama, in Mobile. We'll start the operations in 2015. If we have potential of more global partnership, we'll look at that. We are, I think, very open, being open as such within Europe in Airbus, and it will be clearly a stream for the success, further success, long-term success of Airbus. Last but not least, profitability. We have the order book, 5,000 aircraft. We have excellent products. We are cutting down the costs. We need to manage properly our big development challenges. This one, what I can tell on the Dash 1000 is that the definition is frozen. We have drawn the lessons of the 900, and now we'll have to roll out full speed the development of the Dash 1000 to be ready for 2017. But there is nothing extraordinary to do to achieve what our CFO, Harold Wilhelm, has targeted, which is 10% return on sales in 2015, assuming an exchange rate of $1.3 per euro, and putting aside the diluting effect of the launch of 350. So hopefully this one will come true. We have, I think, a clear action plan within 2 years to drastically improve our profitability, hence generating more value not only for our shareholders but also for our customers and being able to invest even more in our products. This is what I wanted to say as an introduction, and now I'm pleased to take some of your questions, even if I see nothing yet.
Then it starts a Q&A session, and I see the first hand here. Andrea Rosman from Bloomberg.
Yeah, hello. Following up on something you just said, you said you're opening a FAL in Alabama in 2015, and you would look at other, there is potential of more global partnerships. We could look at that. What kind of global partnerships are you talking about? Does this mean specifically final assembly lines in other countries, or different types of partnerships?
No, I have, perhaps global is a bit excessive. I have nothing special in mind. If you have in mind a merger with any other company, not at all. But I think it works. We have demonstrated that this model works, and we know how to make it efficient. So we will see. We'll see the positive outcome of investment in Alabama. I don't say we'll multiply these final assembly lines, but if there is a market or a partner which is strong enough or big enough to justify such investments, we know how to translate them into commercial success and industrial success. So we are not bound to our European footprint, and we have this know-how. So this was only my message. I have nothing else in mind short of it.
Next question goes to our colleague from Africa.
Thank you. Kale Jesus, representing World Media News. In front of us, we are seeing South African Airways A320 ready to be delivered. Ethiopian Airlines has ordered for 12 A350s. What is your view of African market? Thank you.
I think it's John who made the point, and I concur with him. African market globally, you mentioned two very good examples. That globally is at the, I think, at a very, very early stage, and in the next 10-15 years, it will grow as much as Middle East. So will be different type of aircraft, different business models, but we need to take care that we will make the necessary efforts to capture a big part of this market.
Next question goes to our colleague from China.
Hi, I'm actually Simon from Canada. I've got a question in regard to the Chinese market. We know that the market share of Airbus in China in terms of like in-service fleet has already reached 50%, and your competitor Boeing is now fighting back in the Chinese market. So what's the Airbus strategy to continuously strengthen your competitiveness in China?
You're absolutely right. We will have achieved this year 50% market share in China, which is a very impressive growth. This is, of course, due to the quality of the products. Without good products, you don't sell to Chinese airlines. But it's also supported by our industrial strategy, and we were bold enough to invest in an assembly line in Tianjin. We have delivered so far, I think, 126 or 7 aircraft from Tianjin, largely ahead of the initial planning. And in principle, I see no reason why we would stop this very successful partnership. So we will gradually, probably, move to the Neo family. On top of that, you know that we have a partnership with AVIC Group to jointly produce composite parts in Harbin for our whole family, including 350, which is also, I think, interesting to notice. Then, Chinese industry is growing, and we believe that we will reach a global procurement of $500 million from Chinese industry going to Airbus aircraft in 2050.
Next question to Financial Times.
Mr. Berger, a couple of questions, please. Clearly with NEO, you've established a lead in market share over Boeing. If you look at the backlogs of the two respective companies. In wide-body twin, though, you're behind Boeing, and I want to know whether you're seeking market parity with Boeing in the wide-body twin market, and whether you think the 350 alone will get you there, given you're competing not just against 787, but the 777X upgrade that's coming along. My second question, please, is a broader one about the growth in deliveries we've seen in recent years and whether you think it's sustainable. I say that because production rates, it seems to me, have been predicated on this unusual divergence between interest rates and the price of oil. So do you think production rates will need to come down in the medium term?
Well, on the first one, I agree with you that we have a lion's share regarding the single-aisle market. Will it continue? When you have the best product, normally, yes. But we will see. And we are not just driving the sales with the market share in mind. But everybody knows that Neo is better than Max. On long range, I would disagree. Yes, the 777-300ER is very successful. But we have delivered 100, how many? 100 plus, I don't know exactly, A330s last year. Yes, the 787 is starting to ramp up. I think they are already at rate 7, as I have read in your newspapers. Well, at least at production line. But we are catching up with the 350. And our job is to catch up even further. And when we look at the higher segments, the 380 is delivered for passengers around 25-30 aircraft a year. And I don't think there is this potential in the 747-8, which is an outdated aircraft. Would they need the 777X if the 747-8 was a good aircraft? The answer is no. So, your last point is, yes, but they will lead again with the 777X. Honestly, they redo the Max story. This aircraft is real. This aircraft is not a paper tiger. I am not questioning whether I will fold the wings or I will stretch a little bit further the fuselage. This is defined. It will come live in 2017. I don't need a brand new engine. I have it being developed by Rolls-Royce. And when I come up on this market, and I bring globally, John would say that I am silly, and I would say much more performance, but globally the same performance as the 777-300ER, but with 25% less fuel burn, the competitor must do something about it. And so the 777X, and I don't know the details of this aircraft, and I'm pretty sure Boeing will be able to develop something one day, which is a good aircraft, even if it's not so easy to start with an existing one. They will come late, and it's an answer to the success of this aircraft. So, who is leading the long range? I think somebody said that we don't have the guts or the appetite to launch, what is the formula? All ground-up aircraft. I think this one is a brand new aircraft, not the 777X, which is a derivative of a heavy existing platform. And this is mature, this is, I believe, with limited technology risks, knowing very well the 900, and I have no appetite at all to launch a grounded aircraft.
Next question.
So, Mr. President, from Brazil, from Folha de São Paulo, Brazilian journal. In recent years, there were important mergers in Latin America, here, in Latin American airlines. What has been the impact of these mergers in Airbus business development in South America? And the second question, did LATAM, the union of LAN-Chile and the Brazilian TAM, keep ordering the A350 made by TAM 3 years ago?
Yes, at least to my knowledge, and yes, and they are looking for this aircraft, and they need it. LATAM, I think the consequence is that we have the biggest Airbus ever customer in Latin America. So what I say has perhaps to be corrected with the last orders we got from Lufthansa, but it was when the merger took place, creating the biggest Airbus fleet and order intake of Airbus aircraft. So for us, it's very important and strategic partner. It's more a partner than a customer.
Next question to
Christian Schubert, Frankfurter Allgemeine, here, in the middle here. Mr. Brigitte, just a question on this eternal subject of the launch aid. Can you just talk us through the current situation? Have you, I suppose you have not yet received the money from Germany. What are the reasons for that? Have you received any money from other governments? And the second question would be, what's the latest economic situation in Europe? How you experience it? How do you see the demand developing in Europe in the context of the general crisis? Thank you.
Well, first of all, we don't receive launch aids. We have refundable launch investment that we refund. And the situation is simple. You know that all the nations contribute to it. And we have to solve one issue with Germany. This one was public. I will not go into the details. If we can solve it, I will be very pleased. Regarding the economic situation in Europe, it has, of course, it has an impact on Airbus. But first of all, if we take the order book of Airbus, I think only 14% is in Europe. And in Europe, you don't have only the Eurozone. This is also Eastern Europe. These are countries which grow, like Russia. So we are not dependent on the Eurozone market, first point. Second point, even in this Eurozone market, we have allies who have very long-term plans, who are, were, or will be successful. We have been selected by Lufthansa for the Neo 400 aircraft. I hope we'll firm up the order with Air France on 25 A350s. There is a tender ongoing in Lufthansa for long range. We have been selected for the Dash 1000 with British Airways. And so we, which is not really part of Eurozone, but at least where Iberia partner is. I just correct for my friend. There is an appetite because we bring value to the customers with these new products. This is the reason why they are ready to invest. If they want to remain competitive, they have first to cut their cost base, and they are doing it. But at the same time, they need to invest in the best possible products. And we are believing that we help them getting sometimes out of difficult situations. So Europe is becoming more active, including Western Europe.
Next to Italy. No?
Gianni Dragoni from Il Sole 24 in Italy. I don't know whether you have had the chance to meet the new Chief Executive Officer of Finmeccanica, Mr. Alessandro Panza, but last week during the shareholders' general meeting, talking about Boeing and Airbus, he said that Finmeccanica and Alenia rely more on Boeing than on Airbus as an industrial partner. And he added that their cooperation with Airbus for the 380 is they are losing money while they are having better margins on the A380, on the A320. So I would like to know how would you reply to that, and if you think you could have better cooperation with the Italian aerospace industry, or do you think they are lost to Boeing?
No, but I have a lot of respect for Finmeccanica. I just remind you that I managed the Italian missile business when we merged it within MBDA, so it's already more than 10 years ago, but I had a part of Finmeccanica business under my leadership. I will not comment on whether they make profit or not. I think they took contracts, and what we expect from suppliers is that they deliver, and I think the main problem of Mr. Panza is to deliver. If he delivers good performance to Airbus, we will be more inclined to look for growing business. This is what I can say, and I'm sure this is what he wants to do.
Next question to the last row.
José Miguel Rodríguez, de Avión Review Internacional. I have two questions. The first, you are making doors for the A320 in Querétaro. Are you planning to expand your parts production in Mexico? And the second is, what do you think about the Latin American market?
We have our partners and investing a lot in Mexico. I can take Safran Group, Lamina Group, Eurocopter has decided an investment and will gradually produce more doors. So the answer is yes. Airbus as such has no plan right now to have an Airbus plant, but we are encouraging our teams because we have benchmarked the countries, and Mexico offers a very good mix of skilled people with a very high level of aerospace education and at the same time competitive conditions. Regarding the market, this is a big growing market, and we have very good customers there. These customers need more aircraft. They run tenders, which sometimes are very challenging, but we hope to grow business even further. You know, in this business, you have two types of business. You have a replacement business. If you take America, it's huge. It's 4,500 single aisles, and you have a growth business. And growth is not limited to China or to India, and Mexico is clearly a very growing business. I don't have exactly the numbers, what we call in the global forecast in the next 20 years, but my teams can provide you with these numbers. They are impressive.
We have another question from China, then over Asia, and then France.
I come from CNC News. As we know, A350 will take the first flight very soon. Meanwhile, in China, the first 787 has delivered. But A350 just had 10 orders from China's airlines. So my question is, what do you think of A350's performance in Chinese market in future?
I believe that the A350 has more potential than the 787. This one is not a surprise. And especially for the airlines in China. What I am told by the Chinese authorities is that they would like to convince the airlines to buy larger models of the same family. And this is a trend everywhere. We sell more 321s than 320s, than 390s now, and it was totally the opposite some years ago. And when you compare the 787 and the 350, and when you look at the aircraft, and I hope that most of you will be unfortunately invited with a very, very short pre-notice, and I apologize for that. For the first flight will join us, you will see that this aircraft not only is nice, but it's also bigger. And so we will have a family with the 900 and the Dash 1000, which I believe is better positioned when you are constrained by slots. And it will be, I think, in the long term, one big constraint for the Chinese market.
Next question to Asia over there.
Hi, this is Saurabh Sinha from Times of India, Delhi. I have 3 questions for India. What is your outlook for Airbus in the country, with 2 of your big customers, Indigo and AirAsia, having major plans for the country? AirAsia will be starting an Indian subsidiary under the relaxed FDI norms. So how do you think the relaxation of FDI norms in India, allowing foreign airlines to invest in Indian carriers, going to impact the market? And third, do you have any assembly line plans for India? Earlier there was talk that apart from China, Airbus may have an assembly line in India also.
Indian market, we can only be very pleased with what I would call the deregulation, but this is not the appropriate term, of this Indian market, and pleased that Indigo can continue to grow and operate the 320s, and it can only benefit from that, because the Indian market is at this stage not at the level of the Chinese market, and on paper there is no reason that the growth that China airlines enjoy cannot be the same in a few years in India. Second, you mentioned 2 of our best customers, Indigo and AirAsia, and both will be they are already very successful, and will be very successful in India, but not limited, of course, to India. And we are very pleased to have been selected as the partner of choice in the continuity between the 320 family and the 320 Neo family. This one has, I think, a lot of value and a lot of potential for us. And we'll, of course, try to support them as much as we can. Yes, we sell to many airlines, and so sometimes we sell to competitors flying our aircraft. This is life. But I can tell you that these 2 will be successful. Then we don't have plans so far to have big projects of assembly line in India. The market size is not exactly the same. However, we have more and more cooperation with Indian industry, and I think the private industrial companies we see in India are eager to invest. So I will never say no in the long term, but our priority is not there.
Bonjour. Bonjour, Benoît Public Les Échos. Several questions related to the A380. Have you any plan to reduce furthermore the production rate? And how many orders would you need not to have to take this decision? And how low can you go on the production rate without compromising the break-even target?
We have an objective in the long term to deliver 25 to 30 aircraft a year. And we are on track with this objective. We'll deliver 25 aircraft this year. We'll probably be higher next year. And in 2015, we have still a few slots. When I say a few, this is less than on one hand to achieve this target. So we are not, in a panic mode. And John, I think, has confirmed that he has still some very good prospects this year, and we will see if we will deliver or not this aircraft in 2015. Back to your question regarding the break-even point. Yes, it helps if we have a bigger number of aircraft, but we have a target which is to be break-even with the A380 in 2015, and I believe we have a potential to achieve this target.
Next question to Tim Robinson.
Hi, Tim Robinson. What would be the effect, hypothetically speaking, on work share and industrial investment if a key Airbus European core country decided to have a referendum and end up leaving the EU?
Would be, perhaps as a European citizen, something more important than as the Airbus CEO, because United Kingdom is not part of the Eurozone, so it would not destabilize further the Eurozone, and they are supporting, not us, they are supporting the aerospace industry very much with a big program which is called ATI, as you know, and which injects a lot of support in research and technology, so disconnected from the program, but very long term, and it's again not an Airbus tailored program. It covers all the UK partners, suppliers and prime contractors and engine makers. So I guess this one will continue. And in this business, we have to deal with political factors. We are used to it. Sometimes the relationship between France and Germany are good, sometimes they are less good, and Airbus is still there. And Tom Enders would give you probably a blunt answer, which is that we don't care because we are industry. And we have 72% private shareholders.
Next question over there.
How do you assess the Middle East market, and how are you responding to the appetite of the Gulf companies in buying more and more airplanes?
I think we are not doing bad. Of course, we are very pleased, but I'm very pleased to see that not all the growth, but the majority of the growth of Emirates comes from the introduction into service of the A380. And right now, Emirates would like to have more aircraft delivered faster, than slowing down the production. So this one is a good example. We enjoy, I believe, a good relationship with all the companies in this region. Qatar Airways, a large customer, the 350, both 900 and Dash 1000. This is something very important. Etihad as well, and others who are about to make decisions. So Middle East is, I think, culturally a region of the world which is very close to Airbus, and we'll try very modestly to deliver according to our commitments and then to be their partner of choice, but the competition is tough.
One question over here.
Yeah, Herbert Nielsen from News Today. Going back to the issue of the A380, the aircraft was built on the assumption that we would see airlines building up intense and very high volume traffic between capital airports and the hub and spoke system distributing traffic there. Instead, we are seeing quite the opposite with the increasing number of point-to-point traffic, intercontinental traffic. What makes you believe that we will see a return to the strategy that would require the A380? Thank you.
Well, I just gave you a counter example, no? With Emirates, but it's not limited to that. Come to Paris Air Show, you will see a 380 in British Airways livery. Then, that it's more difficult to sell a big aircraft than to sell a Neo or even a 350, this one is true. Because this is an investment, this is necessitating some changes in the approach of the airlines, because this aircraft didn't exist, so you have to find a way through that. But Singapore Airlines has bought additional aircraft, Lufthansa as well, and you Emirates. They started with much smaller numbers. So this aircraft is finding its way. And when a customer operates a 380, they gain market share. And the competitors can notice it. We have still 160 aircraft in our backlog. I would prefer to have 500 or 600. But how many 747-8 Boeing has in its backlog? You know? Check with them. I don't think it's close to 160. So, yes, we have to do our work to convince the airlines to simplify the introduction into service of a 380, to have it even more reliable, to improve the aircraft during the time. And by the way, we have increased the payload by 8 tons since the introduction into service of this aircraft. And we will continue to do so. So the battle between point-to-point or big hubs is very theoretical. Dubai, Milano, Dubai, Manchester, is it point-to-point or is it hub? It's a mix. It's a market which didn't exist. And with the talent of Emirates, the vision of Tim Clark, and the quality of the A380, he makes a lot of money with it. So we will see, but I am pretty convinced that this 380 will get additional orders this year and in the years to come. And we don't need much to cope with our target. What is extraordinary in this business is the Neo, the 350, the 787, because we can't offer slots before now, globally, 2020. This is not normal. If you buy a car, you don't want to wait for 5 years just because it's a nice car. So A380 is, I would say, in the norm, and the rest is extraordinary.
Thank you, Fabrice, for these words. Thank you for your time with us. I know, but Fabrice has a plane to catch. This is my understanding. So thank you for your time, and
thank you very, very much, and enjoy.